Hey guys, King of Average here. As you may have noticed, I hit 2,000 subscribers the other day, and so I went to Patreon to ask my patrons, just to ask me anything. In fact, what I said is, ask anything you want and a comment to this post. Go forward and ask me a question about my opinions, plans, tastes, favorites, family life, top picks, favorite color, mother's maiden name, pizza topping choices, special talents, record of amount of pogo stick jumps, anything at all. And then I didn't read any of the comments to start out with. My wife informed me of one, so I did respond to one. I'll get to that one first. But other than that, I have not seen these before, so this will be pretty live. Okay, so first question by Scott Bates. Where would you prefer we post questions to you? This is the one I was notified of. So, in this post, Scott, in this post, which I added the, ask a question in the comments to this post. That was not there before because I am terrible at directions. Alright, let's say the next few are by Watch It Paint It. So the first one is, where did you get your idea for the channel from? That's kind of a, I don't know, there's a lot to that, and I'll kind of try and break it down. So, I painted very briefly as a teenager. I don't even think I finished any paintings, like any actual miniature. They were all just kind of half done. I only had like 3 or 4 colors. But I got into Warhammer 40k a little bit and played Orcs. And by played, I mean I played one game and then watched other people play it. I was more interested in the hobby, but I was also a very poor teenager that didn't really have, could afford a lot of the paints, and I lived out of any town that had a gaming store, so it was kind of an hour-long trip just to get somewhere anyway. So, the most I did was dry brush. I had 2 different greens, and so I painted them a darker green and dry brushed on a lighter green, and I had a metal. And so that was kind of my, my painting foray for a while there. Flash forward a little bit over a decade, and, my wife, as like a surprise, buys me some Warhammer 40k miniatures that I put together, prime, and then do not paint. Mainly because I don't know if that makes me a terrible person or not. I was going through college at the time, so we were pretty busy. Anyway, then eventually I graduated college and got introduced to Zombicide, and then promptly bought Zombicide. This was Rue Morgue, which I believe is the 3rd iteration of Zombicide. And, all these miniatures were amazing, and I was like, I'll start painting them again. That'd be kind of cool. But I don't. I have never painted a Zombicide miniature before. However, around this time, I'm getting more into board games, and through that, I start seeing different YouTubers painting miniatures. Now, as you know, most of the people on YouTube paint, the big ones anyway, will paint a tabletop, Warhammer 40k or anything like that that's, super popular. But board games are kind of a niche painting group. Sorestro was really just getting his start with Descent, and I had just bought Descent 2nd edition. And so those were really the first ones I started to actually paint. So I painted a Naga, and I painted, the Shadow Dragons, the Fire Imps, and, the Myriads, or whatever, the little fish squid people. Anyway, so I'd painted, just a couple of them, and then got Blood Rage. And absolutely love Blood Rage. Great miniature line. And I planned to paint them, but still never did. And as this is going on, I'm still watching, other people paint their miniatures, but haven't actually pulled the trigger to really do a whole lot about it. And certainly not, posting videos of it. So then, comes Massive Darkness, and I start painting Massive Darkness. And around this time, I'm still watching Sorestro, and he's getting better and better and painting amazing stuff and using all these fancy techniques and custom mixing like 4 colors in one, and, really going in there and knowing kind of the, cool versus warm colors and, complementary colors and all that stuff that I don't know about. And, my wife is talking to me about how it would actually, because I was talking to her about how I could never do that. Like, I like watching it, but I could never do it. And, she actually made the comparison to makeup tutorials, where, on YouTube, there's, I guess, a lot of people that will do makeup tutorials, and they call it a tutorial, but they're at such a professional level that most people can't ever achieve that, or would even be able to attempt it. And so it kind of loses its value in tutorial. It's so entertaining, but it's not really a tutorial that you can follow. It's the average person can follow. And now maybe you can see where I'm getting here. So that having somebody who's average just show what anybody can do is really helpful. And so I think that's really cool. So I decide to start playing around with it. I do a lot of research into YouTube, and I mean like the business logistics level of YouTube, from, intros to, stings and advertisements and just all a ton of stuff there. I mean, I do this for, I would say at least 2 months, where I just dig deep into the minutia of running a YouTube channel. I don't really have any equipment yet, right? It's kind of expensive to get equipment unless you want to start with a handheld phone, maybe. And so I start recording my Massive Darkness paintings. So I recorded a Goblin Archer miniature, and I record the columns from the Kickstarter exclusive. I recorded that as well. Very poor quality. I didn't have a name yet for the channel or anything like that. Just to kind of get a sense of maybe what I can do now versus what I need to do to kind of get, what I need to purchase as an upfront cost for the channel. And after I record the Goblin Archers and the columns, I'm about to start another one. I actually decide to search, on YouTube. And that's actually where I found you, Watch It Painted. I saw your Goblin Archer miniature. I think you only had 2 or 3 paintings there. You had like the mummy dude and I think one other, and then the Goblin Archer, which I think was your top miniature at that time. And I was like, hey, this guy's actually doing it. And I've been, looking into it and mulling it over for so long now. I should probably just pull the trigger and actually do this, because at this point I was ready to do everything when it came to what I wanted to do. I was just not ready to purchase all the equipment, right? Because there's a light ring that I have, and I use my wife's DSLR camera, which isn't optimal for video, but a great camera nonetheless. A tripod, just a microphone set, all this that I'm recording on right now, software, all this sort of stuff. And so I went and did that and dove in, and the rest you guys know. Now, originally, it wasn't just a miniature painting channel. It was just, I'm a huge nerd. So I did anime and video games and comics, big DC fan here. And so I just, I kind of shotgunned everything. I did, try to do Let's Plays and all that. But really the miniatures are what took hold, and kind of the board game area is kind of what I focus on now. All right, long answer to that one. I think the other ones will probably go quicker because I can see it right now. So Watch It Paint follows up that golden nugget with a, can dogs look up? Yes. Yes, well, yeah, no, they totally can look up. Have you never seen a dog look up? I'm not sure. Maybe some dogs can. I don't know, because, dogs are all kinds of different. I wonder if there's a breed of dog that cannot look up. Kind of like, like what, sheep can't walk backwards? And maybe there's like some dog with some like freaky skeletal structure to where it can't look up. How up are we talking? Like, is it straight up, or it doesn't matter. They can look up. So suffice it to say, dogs can look up. I see my dog chasing airplanes in the backyard all the time. All right, and Watch It Painted again. He was rapid fire on these apparently. Have you ever cuddled a miniature to sleep? And does your wife know? Well, cuddle is kind of a strong word here. I have almost fallen asleep while painting. So I don't have a lot of time with the family and work and all that to necessarily fit in painting. And so typically I start around 10 p.m. and end around 2 to 3 a.m., sometimes a bit later. So, there's a lot of late nights with miniatures, if you know what I mean. And, yes, my wife knows, and she's super jealous. She remembers when I used to love her and not my miniatures and my paint collection. But I've moved on. All right. Next question. Let's get the last one from Watch It Painted. If you could pick any color paint, which would you kiss, marry, and kill? All right. So what paint would I kiss? I'm going to have to look over here at my, paint collection to my left and decide. Okay, actually, no. So, see, kiss and marry. Can I not kiss the one I marry? Or I don't know. My daughter believes that if you kiss, you actually marry. So maybe it's those rules. Anyway, I can't quite answer those two because I don't know what the difference is. Well, I mean, I know what the difference is between kissing and marry. I don't know how to pick one. Like, is one a fling and is one on the side? Is one a like a I don't know. Anyway, cavalry brown. So I really like dark reds. A lot of people like the kind of sports car red, the very kind of almost candy bright red. And it's okay, but certainly not my favorite. But a dark red, in fact, an apple red. If you look up apple red, I don't know what actually shows up, but I've bought in a paint that's apple red before. Love that color red. It's just a very deep red, and the cavalry brown is pretty close to that. If they had an apple red, I'd be all over that junk. I'd be kissing and marrying it. Anytime I can incorporate a dark red in a miniature, I'm happy. Period. I don't know. I just love it. I really like the kind of the fun paints too. The like the bright greens and yellows, and that's just fun to splash on there. Maybe that would be my kiss because it's kind of fun, but the serious relationship is definitely the dark brown or the dark red. All right, and kill. What would I kill? Okay, so this might actually be a little bit of an easier answer here. So, well, I guess it'd be two parts here. So the first part would be the Citadel white. So I think it's actually, I have it here. I have it here because I'm throwing it away. Ceramite white. Garbage. So in that, it's never not been clumpy. Their pallid witch tone or witch flesh or, they have another very, kind of white, skin color that I tried to use once. And it's just all of their whites, for me at least, every time I've ever bought them, and by that I mean 3 different ones, are always just clumpy. The consistency is always weird. I have to try and mix it and I don't know. It just, whatever formula they have to use to make the white paint doesn't work for me. It doesn't flow well. It doesn't get on the brush well. I dislike all of Citadel's whites. I've actually struggled, I don't know, maybe it's just whites, because even with like a Vallejo or Army Painter, the whites always seem to, well, actually, no. So the Army Painter matte white that I have seems to flow just fine. I have a white gray from Vallejo that sort of does the same thing. Their white seems to be fine though. Maybe it's just bad purchasing, but either way, I would kill that. I've removed it from my inventory. It's off to the side. I have enough whites anyway. Okay, next question. Sonia Cathord. I'm not going to be able to pronounce your last name. I do apologize. But Sonia asks, what is my favorite miniature line? Favorite miniature line? So I'm not quite sure if you mean like a line of miniatures for like a tabletop, or if you just mean miniatures from a certain game. So I'm just going to include all miniatures and try and pick my favorite. In which case I probably can't. Now I will say, okay, so, well, there are pros and cons to any. And in fact, if you've watched enough of my videos, you probably know I like to critique the sculpt more often than not. I'm really particular about how a miniature is created and made and designed, both for painting and just in general aesthetics, as opposed to necessarily, this is a cool goblin, right? And so there are some standouts from Massive Darkness that I like in the hero ranges. Some of the heroes are really designed well. However, I wouldn't put that as my favorite line. So Rising Sun has some very cool miniatures, but none that stand out to the degree to where I think I'm like, oh wow, these are absolutely amazing. Blood Rage is fairly static. When it comes to like tabletop, Age of Sigmar fascinates me. In the sense that I think a lot of them are designed really cool, but then I think a lot of them are very static. Like, it looks to me like they still struggle with because it's a, file and rank miniature, they can't be too interesting, I guess. Even with these hot swappable, like arms and stuff like that and weapons, it just doesn't quite, a properly sculpted miniature will have its own design that's just kind of and not something you just slap together. So, and there's fancy ones out there like the busts and stuff like that. So I would say, and again, I've only seen 3 of these so far, but the Batman Gotham City Chronicles miniature line looks to be fantastic to me. Like, all of their poses seem very interesting. None of them are just really standing still. And what I mean by standing still is some poses have been done so much. Like, if you have a barbarian and he has 2 axes and he's going to hold them at an angle on either side downward, that's just like the go-to, I don't know. It's so boring. I've seen it before. I've seen it a million times, and it's not even that good of a sculpt to begin with. But it's not just the sculpt design, it's the amount of detail. So while I think Hate looks amazing, and I'm super excited to paint Hate, the detail is so over the top that while I appreciate it from a painting perspective, it's a con, right? It's a pro for the sculpt, con for that. The Batman miniature game, because it's based off comics, the amount of detail, like if I look back at my Bane miniature, or even my SWAT miniature, the amount of detail they put into there is almost the perfect amount. So all the poses are really cool, and I'm happy with all the poses that I've seen. I didn't see any that were like really bad. Some are a bit more plain, but they're representative of the character, I suppose. But in general, the poses are great. The amount of detail on the miniature is awesome, and I just like the IP. So I'm showing a little favoritism there. All right. Next, my wife asks a question. Have you ever tried to record an unboxing of your own purchased items with a whole lot of emoticons? Yes. So, to the point, so, as you know, I reviewed, Army Painter's Rising Sun, paint set. And so I knew that was coming along with the mega set or whatever. And so I figured it would be in a fairly big box. And I get this fairly big box from Army Painter, and I'm like, oh, okay, don't open it. I'm at work at the time. And I come home and I set up my camera, and, I have to raise it on the tripod and all that to really get it in the camera, because this is a big box. And I'm, opening it up, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know this would come so soon, and I'm interested to see what's all in here. And, I'm all talking to the camera, doing my unboxing thing, really rocking it. I'm knocking it out of the park. It's going to be an awesome unboxing, for my low standards. I'm pretty terrible at unboxing things. And I open it up, and I just go, oh, I bought these. And so I'd bought a whole bunch of basing material, from my Patreon money, actually. So I went and showed you guys a picture of it. I'll put it up here on the screen, of what I had purchased. But because they came in so close together, this was actually my purchase and not the review item that I had received. And, seemed kind of, first of all, I'd already unboxed it now, so it was kind of ruined there. And then on top of that, it just, I don't know, it was pretty bad. And apparently I'm never going to live that down. So, thank you, wife, for bringing that up for everybody to know. Next question, moving on from that quickly, is Phil Ogden? Ogden? I don't know. Maybe you'll have to correct me. But Phil here asks, when did you start painting? Oh, he's going to put a whole bunch in here. What's your favorite part of the hobby, and how often do you actually play the games you're painting? Okay, so let's break that down. When did I start painting? So I started painting, like I said, when I was about 16, maybe 15, right around there, right around the time when I could drive. I live in Idaho. You can learn at 14 and a half, drive at 15. And so, it was about 15 or 16 because I could actually drive to the game store. And I had a tiny bit of money I could spend. I painted a few of those orcs that I had mentioned before, and I had one of their like trucks. And so, but I couldn't paint it red, so it couldn't go fast. But I had all these other bits because orcs come with a whole bunch of extra little bits that you can just add to things or change things up, because they're really kind of scavengers, and they would have doodads all over if they could. And so I enjoyed that part of the hobby. So I like decked out the truck and glued them all on there. And I did a lot of the building and, gluing and that, and a little bit less of the painting, just because I couldn't afford both, right? And I had to have the product. All right, fast forward to, again, a few years later, and I get into actual board games, and I have a real job now where I can actually buy things, and so I have these board games, I buy these paints, and I start painting them. Now, I will say, I guess I could address this, and hopefully it's not a question below. There's only a couple more. I didn't go and buy a pack of paint. I'm very detail oriented, and so I actually plan out all of my miniatures to the point where I know exactly what color I want for each, and I look online to see what all the different color options are, and then I would buy the paints I need for that miniature, which meant that I had moot green before I had white. Or no, before I had black. Yeah, so I hadn't bought an Abaddon black yet, but I already had moot green because I needed it for something. I can't remember. I had to go back later on in that miniature because I found I did need black, but I've gotten better at planning them since. Anyway, so yeah, I would just buy paints kind of every so often as I painted these miniatures. Okay, the next part of that question is, what's your favorite part of the hobby? My favorite part is actually the painting. So I have never speed painted. I've never really, while I would love to have a fully painted set, it's never actually been one of my goals. I really enjoy painting. And to the point that and that's why I don't speed through it, right? I'm trying to enjoy it, and I get a lot of satisfaction from it being completed. I find it very calming to actually do it. And it's something that I look forward to. And so the idea of just trying to get it done as quick as possible and not caring necessarily how it looked, but I'm just trying to get it the set because I want the painted set is not my goal. My goal is to just, take a miniature that I really want to paint or that I like, and designing the paints around it, getting the paints, painting it up, and liking how it looks afterwards. That is like the best part of the hobby for me, is afterwards when you see it. And I'm still to the point in my confidence level where I'm surprised it looks good each time. But I am, and I really enjoy it. I'm not here to paint as fast as possible. I'm here to enjoy the painting process. And then last part of the question, how often do you actually play the games you're painting? Okay, so it really depends on the mood of the family. So the most I game with is with my family. I do have, work friends and whatnot that will, or even, old friends from like those Warhammer days that'll play, board games. But I have a pretty big family, and so it's not always ideal to come here, but then it's not ideal to leave anywhere because I have a pretty big family. And my wife likes to play too, so it's not like hey, bye wife, you do whatever you like to do. I'm gonna go play board games, right? She'd want to be involved. So, it really depends on the family and what we're into at the moment. We played a ton of Descent. I mean, hundreds of hours of Descent, guaranteed. As a whole family. We've been playing Rise of Moloch a lot lately. I've been playing Rising Sun. So currently not as often as we have in the past, but that could change in any given week, right? When we really get into something and that's what the family wants to do. I would say, let's see, we play at least 3 times a month, I would say. Not quite once a week, but fairly often. And it typically, we'll go through a whole, mission if it's like that, or a whole game or something like that. So we spend quite a few hours still playing the games. Believe it or not, yeah, I actually do like board games. All right. Next is, Scott Bates. What do you do for a day job? Assuming Patreon and YouTube are not paying all of your bills. They are not. So YouTube still doesn't have me monetized. There was that whole Logan Paul thing and a whole bunch of other stuff where they really cracked down on allowing people to get in. So now everything's manually reviewed, and there's a lot of people on YouTube. And so while I met the 10,000 needed and the 1K subscribers, months ago, I'm still under review. They're hoping to have it done by the end of April. Last I checked on my vidIQ, I'd make like $60 a month. Though that may have changed. I don't know. vidIQ doesn't show that anymore. vidIQ is an add-on YouTubers can get to really get a lot of data off of YouTube channels, including your own or even just individual videos. Anyway, yeah, obviously not a whole lot there. You really need millions or, at least hundreds of thousands to even talk about any kind of real money, especially for the work involved. And then Patreon, I list that public. I don't feel I need to, scare anybody off with that. And it's not a whole bunch, right? I mean, I appreciate everything. Trust me. And it's already helped. I try to post what it is I buy. I'm still waiting on this month's, what I bought with the money, but I'll post it to Patreon and you guys can see what the money actually went toward. But that's around $85. So I can't really raise a family of 6 on $200, very well. That would be kind of rough. And in fact, because I'm about to get to what my day job is, I don't see YouTube or Patreon ever replacing my job. Just to be upfront there. While I do love it and I really enjoy it, I actually do, like my other job a lot too, and it pays a little bit more. So what do I do for a day job? Well, I am a software engineer, and as such, I get paid pretty well there. You know, I'm not a millionaire or anything, and I'm just starting out my career, but I get a fair amount, enough to, you know, financially meet all of my family's needs, which I put in my Patreon. Am I about, you know, the giving for the Patreon really allows, first of all, it's great encouragement, but it also does allow me to purchase kind of the stuff that would normally be outside of my, you know, spending allowance, you know, according to our budget. And so I've really just tried to kind of invest more in the miniature board game stuff, and that money, because it's only for that, forces me to do that, which means you guys benefit from it. So anyway, yeah, software engineer, though, I'm more in management than that, so I'm a lead there. So a lot more Excel and PowerPoint and a lot less Visual Studio and C# and Java. Okay, next question is from Manuel. And he says, when do you fit painting into your schedule around family and work? See, a lot of these I'm touching up just with other answers. How many hours do you dedicate to painting, including prep per week? And any tips for more efficient prep? All right. So, how and when do I fit painting into my schedule around family and work? Well, I have a family of 6. So I have my wife and 4 children, 2 12-year-old boys that are twins. And then I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, both girls. And so we have a pretty big family here. And one of my sons is, you know, autistic in the sense that he's at about a year and a half mentally. So he doesn't really speak, and, you know, he mostly just watches, you know, Finding Nemo 24/7. So he's kind of a handful, and then of course we have the normal kids on top of that, and especially, you know, 12 becoming teenagers. They're a lot of work when it comes to that, and I enjoy spending time with them. Just earlier we were watching. My daughter's huge into DC too, so she's wanting to watch Justice League. I told her she has to watch Batman vs Superman first. She'd only watched Man of Steel, so we're watching through that. Don't judge me. We enjoy it anyway. So, like I said, I don't fit it in until around 10 p.m., which is when I used to, like, you know, play video games or do really anything for myself. So I start at 10 p.m., sometimes a bit earlier. It really just depends on the day, right? And we, you know, what we're doing as a family or what needs to be done around the house and or how late I've been working. I've been working a little later lately, you know, just those kind of general crunch times that happen. Anyway, so, and then I paint and then I edit. Now, I will say that the YouTube editing process doubles the paint time, at least. Because there's a lot when it comes to editing the cut, to adding the, you know, the painting overlays, to creating in Photoshop the actual pictures of the paint pots and all that sort of stuff, to the thumbnail, to posting, to adding all the tags, to adding a description, to making sure it's posted on Twitter and, you know, Facebook and Instagram and all those other kind of things. It at least doubles the time there. And so typically if I spend, and I paint slow too. So I probably spend a minimum of 2.5 hours on any given miniature. And so then that's another 2.5 hours of editing on top of that. It's a lot of time for just one video, which is why I've kind of tried to drop down a bit on the miniature painting ones, because they do take so much longer. I was really trying to, you know, kill myself over getting them out 3 times a week. Even 2 a week is at my absolute limit. So how do I schedule time around it? Well, I stopped doing everything else. So I haven't played a video game in a while. Haven't read a comic in a while. Don't watch his movies as often. Pretty much any spare time I have, if it's not spent with family, is spent on the channel itself and painting. That being said, so, because I think I know where you're getting at with the tips for efficiency for prepping and stuff like that, I paint about the same amount as I painted before my YouTube channel, but I paint more consistently now. So it takes longer, so I don't paint as many. But back before my YouTube channel, because there was nothing really forcing me to paint miniatures, I would paint a whole bunch. And then I would stop. And then like a month later come back and paint a whole bunch and be like, why did I ever stop doing this? And then stop again, right? Something else would, you know, grab my attention or whatever. And so I'd paint in these spurts, right? Whereas now I'm consistently getting painting done every single week, but it's about just as many because it takes a little bit longer. So for the painting and prep, let's see, it really depends on the miniature, by a large part. So if it's more detailed, it takes longer, typically 4 or 5 hours, as opposed to the 2, 2 to 3 hours of a normal one. Prep doesn't take a whole lot. I've never washed my miniatures ever. I've never given them the bubble bath or anything like that. I've never had any issues with it. The primer sticks fine. I don't know. I feel like some of that might come from back when they used to be metal, and maybe you had to do it more there, but I've never had a problem just priming and painting a plastic miniature without a wash. However, sometimes I will try to, and I show you guys the prep all the time. So if I have to unbend a sword or try to, I do the hot water trick and then I scrape them off. But that doesn't, honestly doesn't take too long. The only time it feels like it takes a long time is if I batch them. So sometimes I know exactly what miniatures I'm going to be doing. So I prep them all at the same time and then paint them, in order afterwards. And that can take a bit, but not too much. So any tips for more efficient prep? That batch probably does help. So especially like the hot water thing, you got to get the bowl and get the hot water and all that. So if you do, and several miniatures that need, the kind of that TLC, do them all at that time. Same with, trimming mold lines. I don't know. To me, the prep doesn't seem like it takes too long. But that's also because I paint slow. So I might not offer the best advice here, but I guess do it in batches if you can help it. Okay, lastly, Banda Inku asks 3 questions as well. Which model has been your least favorite to paint and why? Okay, this is easy. Any snake. If it's a coiled up snake, I hate it. So there was a Naga from Descent 2nd edition, which, especially at the time, I thought I painted great. Absolutely hate trying to paint inside of that. There was I can't even think of her name now, the snake lady with the multiple arms in Massive Darkness. Same thing, but not nearly as bad, where you have to get into like her curved tail, and you're really just jabbing your brush in there and praying that it goes correctly. I actually just painted the Neurona. I'm gonna have to re-look at its name. From Rising Sun, it's a Kickstarter exclusive. Just a coiled up snake. Again, same problem. Looks cool, but actually painting it is terrible. Just because they come unassembled and it's all just a wrap, you're really just sticking your brush in there. You don't really have any control of the angle or the brush stroke, or it diminishes the quality. Okay, next question is, which models has stretched your skills the most or helped you to grow the most as a painter? Does it say miniatures? Which model? A single model. I'm not going to pick a single one, because I don't know how much I value one versus the other. Obviously, when you're first starting out and you're learning how to like dry brush, that's so essential that's really helpful. But I don't recall ever I don't know, because I use them, but which one actually took me from like okay to good, I don't know. So like my Shadow Dragon, I dry brushed like a green glow on it, so I had the moot green ahead of time, and then found out I needed the black spikes. I'll show you a picture of that here as well. But technically I knew how to dry brush then, but it didn't really get me to the other point. So I guess, but anytime you do a new technique, right? I think that's huge. So Zoe from Massive Darkness, I did my first wet blending. And so that was huge. Moira, I did the first OSL also from Massive Darkness. So I did OSL better since then. That was kind of a bad first take on OSL. But again, that was the first time doing that. Just recently on the Dragonfly Daimyo from Rising Sun for you guys, I tried non-metallic metal, or NMM, for the first time. So just getting those new techniques and trying them out and doing that, I think is huge. Even on my latest Batman, SWAT rifle guy, I painted dark skin for the first time. And so, I had never really tried that, especially without a wash, because, I wasn't sure how it would look on that, and, just picking the right colors there. And, I try to do something good in each miniature, at least. It's kind of pushing me at least a little bit. But yeah, I would say any one of those where I tried something new is huge. All right. And what has been the best part of being a creator on YouTube? This right here, the interaction between people. This hobby is amazing. The people in the hobby are amazing. I have never seen a hobby so welcoming to everybody before than this. And I mean that, okay, so there are a lot of elitists and a lot of other, hobbies, whether it's, video games, or whether it's, comic books or movies, or it doesn't matter, boat building. I don't know. Maybe that's a good hobby too, to when it comes to the community. But just the amount of times people can post things and not fear, being ridiculed and, being like, haha, that's your best attempt, you suck, you should never do that again. I have never done that. I have not received a negative comment towards me on my YouTube videos ever. Not yet, anyway. In fact, I've only had one negative comment ever, and it was from the video game side of things. You can probably guess what video that was from. And that kind of proves the point, right? This community is awesome. And especially the board game miniature painting is so niche. There's so few of us, all things considered, right? Like, if this is all I did, I would never be, a huge successful YouTuber with millions. There's not millions of us that are interested in watching other people paint board game miniatures on YouTube. It is so niche, but that also makes it so tight-knit and so cool, which is why I have several other YouTubers even posting questions here, because we all kind of interact with one another and all around just have a great time. So I enjoy, talking to you guys and hearing your feedback and hearing your thoughts on upcoming games or this miniature or that, or what I should do next, or, maybe what you're doing when it comes to your paintings, or what you're trying to do, or how you're storing things, or any of that kind of stuff. I love. I think it's great. That's the best part of being a creator on YouTube. It's not the YouTube stuff for sure. It's not the money. That's not really even there. It's just being able to say, hey, here's what I did. What do you think? Do you like it? And the fact that it's helpful. The fact that I found out that some people, watch it with their kids, or, because I run a fairly family-friendly channel here. It's huge. That's awesome. And I love that. Anyway, that's all the questions I got in the short 2 days that this was available. But I really wanted to get this out here before it's like, I'm at 2,500 subs and, people are like, well, this is kind of late. So I wanted to be kind of on time here. And, this has gone on long enough. As you can tell, I could talk a lot, and, you guys asked a lot of questions, a lot of good questions. So I appreciate it. Anyway, I'm glad I was able to incorporate some of my patrons in this kind of celebration of 2,000 subs. If you do want to join them and you haven't, you can, check out the link below to my Patreon and just kind of peruse through it and see what I have on offer, what I have publicly posted, what I don't have publicly posted, the different tiers. But really just, if you want to support, you can go there and be part of kind of this community, but you don't have to. You can also be in the comments below. Speaking of which, if you do have questions, go ahead and post them down there. I'll hang out around there and answer any questions you might have, or any follow-up questions, based off of perhaps my answers. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching, and I will talk to you real soon.